My name is Tim, and I find the I before E rule to be very interesting. Kids in the US are all now headed back to school, having fun learning a few cool new things they may grow up to be interested in, and desperately trying to memorize many others they will never need again after the final. Spelling is one such subject that unfortunately requires a lot of memorization so you know whether or not autocorrect is indeed correct. Fortunately, there are a lot of memorization rules and tricks to offer help, many of which came as a result of the invention of textbooks. And while lugging around and reading through big heavy textbooks can be seen as a huge pain today, they were once instrumental in revolutionizing education. Textbooks started getting used in the 1800s and instantly changed the landscape of education as they allowed children to learn with no direct access to a leader in a given field. The explanations and exercises were simple enough, and it was soon found that rhymes and catchy sayings were an easy way to help retain the information. Unfortunately, English is a rather complex language, so it would have been just as easy to memorize the spellings as it would be to learn some of the tricks, such as this one from an 1855 textbook. At the end of a word, if you find silent E, then throw it away, for there it can't be. When an affix you add with a vowel commencing, thus rogue will make roguish, and fence will make fencing. But if able or ouse follow soft C or G, then change you make changeable, keeping the E. Perhaps the most well-known rule, I before E except after C, was first used in the 1866 textbook Manual of English Spelling by James Stuart Laurie and continues to be taught today. It is a divisive rule, however, having detractors who believe it isn't right often enough to warrant continued inclusion in our education, as well as its share of devotees who refuse to give up on it. Statistician Nathan Cunningham of the University of Warwick decided to see for himself whether the rhyme rang true, so he used a list of 350,000 words to check. First, he looked at the ratio of IE to EI spellings and found I does come before E in 75.37% of words. Now, a rule that is wrong a quarter of the time isn't great, but still, if you're guessing whether a word is spelled IE or EI, guessing the former gives you 3 to 1 odds of getting it correct, so the rule is, for the most part, serving its purpose. But when he looked at the rule's amendment, he found, when following a C, I still comes before E a nearly identical 74.9% of the time, dropping the rule's overall accuracy to 72.78%. So a more accurate rule would simply be I before E, usually. Good news, it still rhymes. Of course, that doesn't stop true believers of the rule from trying to add as many caveats as possible in order to make it work, the most ridiculous of which is from Merriam-Webster, who came up with the following. I before E except after C or when sounded as A as in neighbor and way, unless the C is part of an SH sound as in glacier, or appears in comparatives and superlatives like fancier, and also except when the vowels are sounded as E as in C's or I as in height, or in ing inflections ending in E as in queuing, or in compound words as in albeit, or occasionally in technical words with strong etymological links to their parent languages as in cuneiform, or in other numerous and random exceptions as in science, forfeit, and weird. Is that really easier than just giving up? You can't have random exceptions be part of a rule that kind of negates the point of there being a rule in the first place. But surely there is some caveat you can add. Cunningham continued to look at the pair following each different letter and found I came before E at least half the time following 20 letters and at least 75% of the time for 13 of them. Neither combination followed Q, and of the 5 remaining letters in which E comes before I more often, 4 are vowels A, E, I, and O. The only consonant after which E came before I more often is W, which it does 66.9% of the time. But the biggest exception, the case where E comes before I the most, is at the very beginning of a word, which it does 107 times compared to just 3 the other way. But I guess I before E except after W, and vowels, excluding U of course, most often when the pairing comes at the very beginning of the word, though it's still not a certainty, just isn't as catchy. But is there any letter combination that you can make a rule for? Any 2 letters that appear the same way 100% of the time so you never have to guess? Fortunately, Cunningham took the time to look at every possible letter pair and found 76 instances in which the 2 letters appear the same way at least 90% of the time. This list shows all of them ordered by percentage. 6 of them always follow the same order, though those specific combinations are rather rare. The pair that appears most often in the same order is XH, which shows up 190 times in words such as exhibition, foxhole, and axehead, followed by CQ, which appeared 178 times, such as in lacquer, acquaintance, and racquetball. Third is XS with 101 appearances, including exolve, flaxseed, and coxswain, then XW at 37, and finally XG and XQ with just 13 instances apiece. A few others came agonizingly close, such as XP, which appeared 972 times in that order, and XC with 613 instances, both of which had just a single exception, AX and AXayatl respectively. Other pairs that had just one instance of the letters appearing reversed are BV showing up 141 times, XM and HV appearing 33 times each, and ZP 16 times. Well, X sure seems to come up first a lot, doesn't it? Using the same list of words as Cunningham, I looked up all possible combinations with the letter X and found it comes first 48.66% of the time, mainly because when paired with a vowel, it only came first 35.72% of the time, and that's including when paired with an I coming first 73.62% of the time. However, when paired with consonants, it is first 92.15% of all occasions, and that's including coming second to N 89.26% of the time. So if you insist on having a catchy spelling rule, here's one that's a bit more accurate. Excluding vowels, if you had to guess, the first of two letters is probably X. Of course, as always, exceptions arise. Ignore this with N and also with I. This is accurate 84.9% of the time, a bit better than the 72.78% accuracy of the I before E rule. Of course, this isn't a big help considering X is the fourth least used letter in English, used 0.17% of the time according to Cornell. In fact, my X rule only applies to 7,485 pairs compared to the 18,793 combinations covered by the IE rule. So let's take a minute to just look at vowel combinations since they are used very frequently. E, A, O, and I are the first, third, fourth, and fifth most used letters, with U still in the top half at 12th. In any given non-repeating pair of those 5 letters, I comes first 73.61% of the time, followed by E at 53.19%, O at 52.38%, A at 29.91%, and finally U at 28.72% of the time. For more specific combinations, take a look at this chart. The most common combination would be O before U 94.93% of the time, followed by OA at 90.41%. Down at the bottom, E comes before U just 56.53% of the time. Looking at this, you can come up with the following. O before U, also before A, but not before I, that would be cray. Of course there is always exceptions, you say. O does precede I after Z, Y, and J. That's not all you have to look out for, you see. Same caveat applies before O and D. This is a little more accurate than my X rule with 86.37% accuracy, and for pairs that are used far more often as this covers 55,902 combinations. And what about the most commonly used consonant? T. There are 5 letters when combined with T appear in the same order at least 90% of the time. T comes before J and Z about 96% of the time, and it follows P 92%, N over 97%, and X over 99% of the time. So, T before JZ, but after NX and P is accurate 96.92% of the 36,838 instances those pairs appear together. And looking specifically at the NT combination, which appears far more often than the other 4, you can come up with N before T except after SHN and C, a rule which has a 97.64% accuracy on 30,655 pairs. Now, a spelling rule with an accuracy of at least 90% is really good, especially when there are a significant amount of times the rule can be used. Of those 76 pairs to appear in the same order at least 90% of the time, here is each individual letter ordered by the number of appearances on that list, along with the total number of pairs in which they show up. H shows up the most with 13 appearances, followed by X with 12. However, those 12 instances of X only account for 3,233 pairs, while H is featured 131,193 times. You could also find 10 of those pairs that show up at least 15,000 times. Here they are ordered by the number of appearances, along with number of times it appears in this specific order along with their percentage. As you can see, H not only appears the most number of times on this list, it also shows up 6 times in the 10 most frequent pairs. H routinely comes before vowels, but second in digraphs, which are combinations of letters that form a single sound, such as TH in the and SH in shape. So a spelling rule concerning the letter H would be as follows. H before vowels, and that's with Y addressed, but second in digraphs pairs with CGP, T, and S. Here is a rule that has a 94.39% accuracy on 149,018 pairs. So, while it is slightly less accurate than my rules for T, it accounts for far more pairs, appearing in about 40% of the 350,000 words used in my research. Of course, a lot of these are words that aren't used very often. An interesting aspect of language is there's actually very little variety in what we say. In fact, the 100 most commonly used words account for nearly half of it all. The word the alone is nearly 6% of English. So, are there any patterns that emerge there? Now, there aren't actually too many different pairs to study, considering 89 of the 100 words are a single syllable, and 85 are between 2 and 4 letters long, according to the list found on wordcount.org. The pairs that appear most often in the same order are HE, which shows up 13 times, TH, which shows up 12, and OU, which appears 8 times. ER appears 8 times in that order and 5 in reverse order. My H rule applies to 41 pairs on this list with 100% accuracy. My X rule doesn't apply at all, as X does not appear until the 196th word, next. And my T rule also applies perfectly, however there's only one instance in which it applies, the word into, the 61st most used word. There are 11 non-repeating vowel pairs, including the previously stated OU. Of the 3 remaining pairs, you can find EO, which in total appears the same way 65.84% of the time, and in this case appears in the word people, the 81st most used word. You could also find AI, which goes against the grain as that usually only appears 24.17% of the time, showing up in the word said, the 52nd most used word. And of course, wouldn't you know it, you have E coming before I in the word there, the 42nd most used word in English. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you found this research as interesting as I did. I have the list of 350,000 words linked down below, so if you want to check it out for yourself, go ahead. And if you can come up with any rule that is both accurate and accounts for a large number of pairs, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to see what you all come up with.